This video is going to teach you how to worksheet high side light. So we're going to start by looking at our elevation. And it lines up with the set exactly like the section does. So instead of cutting the theater this way with our centerline section and looking at these areas first, we're going to cut the theater this way and look at the areas going across the theater first. High side light's really important because when actors turn to face each other, high side light essentially becomes their front light. And just like front light, it's important to make an even system with roughly the same angle, color, and intensity for the actors to move through seamlessly. I've started by tracing my elevation the same way I traced my section, but it has less information. I haven't traced the set yet because I'm slicing the theater horizontally, and I won't need to know what's behind these areas until I get upstage. So I've traced the inside wall of the theater, the center line, my areas, and I'm about to trace the grid. I'm going to be looking at the pipes that are directly over my areas, and I'm not going to draw them exactly like the elevation you've been given. The pipes stop and start, so I want to know how they really look. You can see that pipe 11 doesn't span the whole way across my areas, so that's how I've drawn it. Next, I'm going to go back to my conceptual hookup where I've thought about the type of light I want to use. And it doesn't matter if it's a wash or a flood, LED or conventional, you're always going to worksheet the same way. But if you choose a flood, just know that you won't have shutters to cut the light off anywhere. I'm going to be using a Source 4 LED luster, but I don't know the barrel yet. So before I decide, I want to make another design choice. I'm going to go back to my research and think about if I want the angle to be steep, flat, or somewhere in between. I'm going to pick something pretty flat. Keep an eye on your inventory. If you've already used a lot of 70-degree barrels, you might have to go with 50s or vice versa. Next, I'm going to pick my color and do my calculations. I'm going to use Lee 200, which is kind of a medium blue. And since that cuts down on my brightness, I'm going to pick a 50 degree. Just like my front light, I'm going to try to keep the same angle all the way across. And the lights still hang down 18 inches. I draw the beams the same way, but notice that there is a different symbol for an LED luster. So you can see that I got to the offstage person here and I can't keep the angle of the side light that I wanted because I picked something really flat, and that's okay. I either know that it's going to be steeper on this side, or in some cases, I would actually put a pipe coming down to try to match the angle. This makes my throw distance much, much shorter. So I would need a much larger barrel, maybe a 90 degree, and I don't have those. It also intrudes on the space. If you wanted to do something like this in a small theater especially, you would have to talk to the set designer and the director because it changes the visual picture and it creates an obstacle for the actors. In this case, it's not a good option, so I'm going to pick the steeper angle and draw that beam separately. This also makes the beam quite a bit shorter, so I'm going to make it a 70 degree, even though my other fixtures in the system are 50 degrees, to try and even out my brightness and my coverage. Next, I'm going to make the beams for the plan, just like I did for the front light. You can see that I wound up with a really long beam, and that's fine. Next, I'm going to take this over to the plan, just like I did before. Next, I want to make sure that I'm using the correct symbol for the barrel, especially when I'm mixing barrel types in one system. And then I'm going to go back to the conceptual hookup and put my channel numbers in. A system of high sidelight is usually hung symmetrically from one side to the other, and we call that reverse and repeat. So once you've done one side, you don't have to worksheet the opposite side. All you do is flip your tracing paper, and that's what it will look like. You've done it. So then this would be one right, this is still one center, and this would be one left. You don't have to do the plan worksheet over again. Next, I'm going to keep making elevations just row by row. So I've done this worksheet. Next, I'll do this worksheet, this one, and then I'll finally get to the areas on the set. There were a few things in that section that you might have seen me do a little differently. First, I used my old section to check to see if I still wanted the same angle, even though these people are in slightly different places. And it did work out. I also used this to check to see if I wanted the same shutter cut, which I did, at least for these two lights. You also saw me decide if this was going to be a 70 again. I thought about it because it would have more coverage. A person standing here isn't going to have any light coming this way. But I decided that that's okay, that this would be steep enough here that I could actually fill in with my top light system. Ultimately, I decided that because this throw is more like this one. So it was only a couple of feet difference. So I decided to keep the system roughly the same. I'll still have to worksheet this one separately because the cut is different and that throw is different enough that I need to make sure it works. Instead of drawing a whole new elevation to look at just 3L, I decided to just draw it on one of my old ones and label it 3L, just to make sure I know that this is on a different plane, but I know I want the light on the same pipe and on the same plane as the ones that I did for 2 and 3. So I just went ahead and drew that in there. And then I made my plan beam. And then I just drew my fixture, I put in my channel number, and I went ahead and drew the beam, which you can see, even though it's going to be really steep, does fill in that area. If I wanted to, even though I don't have another area over here, I could copy that over and give myself another little fill in there. For my most upstage areas, this is when I need at least part of the set traced. And I need that because I need to know about this level change, that I have people on the floor here and I have people on the deck. Don't worry about the legs, just remember that those people are standing downstage of them, in front of them. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to look at the lights exactly as I did before. So I want to match my angle as close as I can. And then I'm going to just work over. And this is another scenario where I will probably pick a different barrel for the people on the deck because the throw distance is about half of what this throw distance is here to this person. This throw distance here versus this here. I'll also have another situation where I'll get to the end and I won't be able to light this person at all. So I'm gonna make a choice. If I'm going to leave that person in the dark on that side, or if I'm going to make essentially a top light. I might choose to leave that person in the dark on one side. They'll have light from the other side. The actor is unlikely to linger there, and I might need to save that light from my inventory for something else. Ultimately, this is what I wound up with. You can see the green line where I thought about lighting this person with a 50 degree like the rest of my areas. But when I looked at this area over here with the 70, I saw that this really catches this person from the side. And I didn't need a separate light to light that person in an area that probably won't be used that much. So I went ahead and just used 3 lights. I'm going to keep this person in the dark, but they'll have side light from this way, just like this person has side light from this way. Fortunately, you don't have to worksheet the other side again. You actually want an even system from both sides. So you're going to hang your lights symmetrically. All you have to do is trace only the fixtures and the center line and plaster line. Then you can just flip it over, line up your center line and plaster line again, and you have the other side already drafted. You might notice that because our pipes aren't symmetrical, that there are places where you might have to add a pipe, like right here, or add a sidearm. And you might see that 2 lights are absolutely pressed up against each other. All you'll do then is when you make your final plot, you'll move these back just a little bit to focus them. So you won't have to reworksheet, it won't make that big of a difference, but just know that that's there. Trace this, put in your positions, and you're good to go.